Real estate.
So realtors are incredibly lazy and they put in pretty much no work for a paycheck, a big paycheck. Okay, that's what I thought before I started working with you and before I started to see the background to what realtors put into transactions. You specifically, so you send me some pretty outlandish emails and text messages.
To be fair, we're talking business outlandish, not random.
Yes, business-wise. So it got me thinking just about investment properties. So I help clients with investment properties. I work with a lot of other realtors who help clients with investment properties. But I've never been privy to being CC'd on like the emails and the texts. And you put in so much work on these. I don't understand the language that you're using sometimes. And I'm just curious, how did you become so well-versed in them? I have a lot of questions. How did you become so well-versed in them? I know you invest in properties on your own. I've never seen another realtor who scripts out the things you do. Why do you do that? What in your eyes goes behind an investment property? What's important? So generally when I get into a transaction or we're shopping, a client comes to myself and their realtor and they give the property over that they want to purchase. There's nothing else beyond that. It's like, I want to buy an investment property. I like this one. I can Airbnb it. Let's go. You don't do that. So why is that?
Okay, so that's a great question. So first of all, I'm a little farther down the path of the whole investment property. Just to clarify for you guys watching this, because she's so humble all the time, she is the brains with the math. So you're staying in lending, right? Because I don't need that competition. As soon as you figure out the
I don't know. I met a really good realtor who can help me with my investment property. So.
And I think like we all use this esoteric language of the investment, the NOI, the ROI, the
You use
cap
a lot
rate.
of those terms, but okay, so I'm just gonna interject and generally, I'm just gonna say it. Generally, there is an investor and there's the realtor and there's the lender if the investor needs a lender. You are somewhere in between there where you're both the investor and the realtor, and you're actually working with these investors to help them find the correct properties and everything. I don't ever see you have a client come to you and just say, this is the property I want, find me a lender or make the offer. It's always a lot of back and forth of you explaining all of these things and sending several different properties instead of just saying, okay, let's make the offer. You send all these properties, you send all of these terms, all of these reasonings, and I'm just curious as to what makes a property worth investing in?
100%. Okay, so let me give you the baseline. So first of all, the investor, I think sometimes we hear the word investor, kind of like commercial property. An investor is somebody who has a chunk of money, some disposable cash, and they're going to buy a car or a camera or a ring, or in my case, a gun, and they're going to figure out if they can flip that for profit. Or a Harley, yes. Hey, that hits personally. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. So anyway, back to task. So that investor is trying to do that. They may be on their first transaction. They may be on their 100th. They may or may not understand what they're doing. They may be embarking. So a lot of times what you'll find is you can I've got an investor who's bought 110 properties in the last 4 years. When we sit down, because I'm inundated in real estate, they're inundated on the surface level of, can I flip this? Can I buy and hold? Can I make money? What is the cap rate? What is what is my return? They're looking at those pieces, but they don't understand real estate like you, and even you understand real estate better than they do because they only understand the surface level, the numbers here versus the numbers there. We understand all the numbers down here and all the numbers here that are making the numbers here.
But there's so much that goes behind it, including the economy and where that's going, and the state of where the property's at, the state of the local economy, global, everything.
Like when I'm like, hey, Becky, it's so great, the interest rates are going to drop, because I was watching a YouTube channel, they're not going to drop because A, B, and C, and I'm like, oh yeah, Becky, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, so
that's what I meant.
We all have our wheelhouse, which is why you're such a asset to my investors, because you can do numbers that are not here. Anytime you take an equation that has 50 facets to it and you look at only one facet, you are dangerously close to falling off the precipice. Yeah. Like if you look at any line graph and you look at one little piece, you might go, oh, radical global warming.
Yep.
Or you might go, oh, there's no global warming
Yeah.
happening, but you need to look at the whole scope.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I provide so much. The other part is really simple, it's good business. When they're coming to me, they're also coming to 11 other agents, and I am going to win. It's not even about the check, it's not about that investor, it's just I'm gonna win. I'm gonna do a better job.
Definitely competitive.
Yeah.
In a good way. I mean, it sets you far and above so many people because you are so competitive. It's like you are going to study your craft until you know every single thing about it.
100%.
And then on top of that, you work a million times harder than anyone I've ever met. But so how does the process go? So like I was saying, I never see this happen. I don't see any other realtors do this. And I'm sure there are some who do put in more than I see, but I see a client come to you, say they're not an investor. They show you a property that they want to buy as an investment property. I've never once seen you just say, okay, let's put the offer in. Why is that?
Well, if my investor makes a bigger profit rather than a lesser profit, the most obvious reason is they're going to use me again. But far deeper than that, and I kind of borrow this from your page, the excellence you bring to your craft actually has promoted me to be more excellent in my craft, is I want to be good. Like at the end of the day, whether they recognize it or not, I know what I did, and if I saved my investor $1.5 million of this space of 6 purchases, like I have a huge amount of satisfaction in that because they're paying me money and time and energy to get to the finish line the best they can. And if I can do that better than anybody else in the industry, like I'm happy. And then the checks come. If you do an excellent job consistently, you're never gonna have to worry about money. It'll always come to you.
Absolutely. Okay, so walk me through the process if you're willing to share.
Okay, sure. So for instance, our we'll call him B, not you B, the other B.
Okay.
He wants to put in on a duplex. It's $505,000. We're looking at probably breaking that down. We'll probably get a seller's credit. We'll get an IPC. I throw that around all the time.
I like it.
Because I learned something
Makes you
from
feel
Becky.
super smart. Me
I'm
too.
smart because I hang out with smart people. That being said though, it's 505. It's a duplex. The area, so I zone the areas at 1 to 8. I'd say it's a 4. So it's like we're
What
not.
does that mean?
So what I do is I look at the scalable equity growth over the next 3 years. So
Okay.
what has it done? What is it doing? And obviously we can't look at crime or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I'm aware of, so I don't look at that because that's illegal, but what I do look at is, so if there's a shooting here, then 6 months later, this property is not going to be worth as much. I can't look at the shooting because that's illegal. I can look at this property is not worth as much. And that's where the whole block is worth less.
Okay.
So what I do is I just look at the raw numbers and I look at the algorithms and then I look at the algorithms of the algorithms. So basically algorithms is just a fancy way of saying a trend. If I say 2, 4, 6, 8, guess what? You're going to say 10. If I say 3, 6, 9, you're going to say 12. So it's just a fancy way for us to look like we're really cool. But all we're doing is going, wow, 4 steps in a row. The 5th one's probably going to be in the same plottable distance.
Okay.
So I look at the algorithms of the numbers. One of the things I do is I do plus minuses. So when I look at the neighborhood in general, so I take the radius, depending on how it's laid out on the streets in the city. Sometimes it's a 20 homes, sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 48. It just depends on the geofencing. When I geofence, I do the algorithm for what the value is of those properties in whole. I look at the value that they're indexing per property based upon the whole number. And then I look at all the other pieces in between. The roof. This one happens to be walking distance to the VA.
Okay.
That's huge for these people.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so it's kind of the same idea, just a little bit more intricate as looking at comps for
it's exactly,
primary.
it's a comp on a comp. It's
Okay.
just a second, third tier of comps. And then what I'm gonna look at is, one of the things that I do is, and so a lot of agents just look at the cap rate. I look at the viable cap rate. So I take into consideration all the pieces, all the numbers, and then we look at the cap rate. Sometimes when I see a 7.2 cap rate, in actuality, once we look at all the numbers, especially the projected numbers, we're sitting at a 6.1, which is still a great cap rate for Reno. It's not a 7.2 though. I'm going to bid higher on a 7.2 than I am a 6.1 for sure, and so is my client. The other piece that we look at is, so you've got your net operating income. NOI. So how much is it gonna be? So we're looking at whole numbers, cash on cash. We're also though looking at ROI, and ROI is your return on investment. I look at two returns. This is dangerous, and I know Kiyosaki, like, cover your ears, you hate me. But there's two ROIs. ROI is obviously the whole numbers, like the cash on cash. So if I have this property and it cost me $1,800 on the mortgage and I'm collecting $2,800, I just made $1,000. Now obviously I net it out and I'm really making $640, but
Right.
once all the expenses are taken into consideration, but I know what the ROI of that is. So let's say I'm making $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 on the year. Cool, there's my ROI.
Okay.
There's a secondary ROI. The secondary ROI is your return on investment in terms of the equity gain. So one of the great things about investment properties is somebody else is paying for your stocks. Basically, your stocks are making you money if you do it right. Cool thing about real estate is your stocks never tank. They can tank in 2007, and in 2014 they've returned.
Just hold and they're
You
back.
just have to hold.
Yeah.
So with real estate, beautiful thing about that is your stocks always go up. It doesn't matter what they're doing in the interim, you hold them long enough, they go up. So we look at the ROI on that too, because there's definitely areas where you're gonna get a 4% return per year after year for the next 7 years. There's places out in Fernley by the USA Parkway with that expansion where you're doubling that.
Yeah.
Your ROI is like 7.8, 8.2. Well, that's a consideration as well. Then we look at the projected investor. What are we doing here? Is this something, so a lot of them are building up to a multi-door. So I've got 20 doors, 2s and 1s, singles and doubles, but I want 40 doors in the future. Well, what's the plan? Is that 12 years from now? Cool. Then we're gonna look at the ROI for 12 years from now. Is that 2 years from now? Okay, that's not gonna work for us because the ROI on equity is not gonna gain in 2 years enough to even cover the closing costs on both sides of the transaction.
What just happened?
So in essence, that's what I do. And because we provide that value, and a lot of it goes back to you. You're running numbers for me all the time. I have lenders before you, I'm not cheating on you. I had lenders before you, they would give me back my sheets 7 days later. Like I come in on my investment property, 72% value. So I figure out the market value, I will offer 72% because that gives me 28% of flex. I have 28%, you figure another 6%, so I'm actually at 78. So if it's 72% of value market, then I'm actually at 78%. I actually paid 78% for that 72% because 6% of closing costs on the transaction, both sides, down payment, whatever. So when we look at it that way, 22%, it's got to be at 22%. I'm not going to fire off. Well, it's not hanging out there. If it's got 22% over market value, that's going to be there for about 7 seconds. And that's why you're so important, because you fire this, like I'll ask for them and I'm like finishing my sentence and you're running me numbers for my investors.
I have to try and keep up with you guys.
And that's why you're so valuable. Like I can't run investors without you. I can be smart over here, but if you can't give them something right there tangible, investors have no loyalty.
How did you start in with these investors? Did you implement what you're talking about right now with one in the word kind of spread? Because you're
Exactly
like this
that.
walking encyclopedia of
That's
other
exactly what
investments?
happened. I had
That's
one
so
good
cool.
review.
Uh-huh.
So I had, actually, they weren't even an investor. It was a non-investor, but they're doing a $1.2 million property, and I ran the equity growth for them and said, this is what I'm projecting equity, this is why you're overpaying that property. Even the market value today is 1.4 on this $1.2 million property. Everything's going down. You look at the last 3 years, everything's going down. And why is it going down? Because they expanded that big thoroughfare right there, and it took all the value of that west side of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so then when they looked at it, they were like, okay, cool. And then that property finally went for, I think it was like maybe $50,000 off of what I said it was worth.
Oh, crazy. That's really cool.
Well, they put a review about how, man, this guy's a real number guy. And I mean, I got the Asian below and a couple of investors
Yes.
who were on social media all the time who saw that, reached out to me and said, hey, are you as good as that review said? And I said,
Better.
well, absolutely not.
Better.
But I have this mathematician of a lender who helps me, and between the two of us, yeah, we're better than that review.
Yep. Well, I love watching it because I've watched you have clients come to you and, like I said, tell you a property that they want. And I just love seeing you opening the world of options, protecting them and showing them a better route. And I think that's why people come back to you over and over again. I mean, there are several reasons, if that be of reasons, the ones you just said. You just know so much. I mean, it's incredible. So just watching you protect your clients, and I think you have fun with it, to be honest.
It
like,
is really fun.
You take these people in and you're like, well, you could do this instead, and you just open this world of opportunities, and it's pretty incredible to watch. So whether you're a first-time home buyer or a long-term investor, you should absolutely reach out to John. He is incredible, knows everything under the sun, will work harder than anyone for you, and his contact info is below.
And thank you for that, Becky. And
I said below because I couldn't remember what it was
the
called.
captions.
It's called a caption.
I couldn't either.
We're not social media gurus.
We do houses, we don't do social media, but we're trying. So give us a
Trying.
A for effort,
A for effort.
and tune into our channel because, pity works too.
Yeah. Not pity like principal interest tax. That has nothing to do with what this script
No,
says.
this is great.
Real as